In this episode, I'll deviate from my usual format of reviewing specific trails. Due to the recent death of a young day hiker in New Hampshire, and with winter approaching, I thought it might be of value to have a special episode on cold weather hiking. I'm certainly not an expert on cold weather survival. I'm just a guy who has had the privilege of hiking and backpacking in various conditions since I was a teenager. So I'd like to share my thoughts on the topic from the perspective of a recreational hiker. We should all mourn the passing of Emily Soto, a 20-year-old college student who recently died while day hiking in the New Hampshire mountains. Her cause of death isn't revealed in the press accounts that I've read, but comments by local officials seem to indicate that she might not have been adequately clothed for the frigid and windy weather at that time. What I find interesting is that she had apparently hiked over 40 mountains with elevations over 4,000 feet. So even at her young age, she seems to have been an experienced hiker. Even experienced hikers can make mistakes. I won't go into detail due to my fragile ego, but I've made several avoidable mistakes over the years. Deaths while hiking don't only happen in cold weather, and they don't only happen when someone's solo hiking. Delphine Martinez, a 59-year-old woman, died in extremely hot temperatures in the Grand Canyon this year while hiking with a group. She was the fifth person to die in the Grand Canyon this year. Recently, a 31-year-old woman died of hypothermia while on a 16-mile hike with her husband in Zion National Park. A 31-year-old man who was hiking with a group in Sarah Park in Mojave County, Arizona, died of dehydration this summer when the group ran out of water and he wandered away from the group. I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm trying to emphasize the importance of proper planning, taking items you might need, and knowing your limits regardless of the season. From my perspective, there are key pre-hike planning steps that we should all complete. Review the weather forecast before and during your hike if possible. On multiple occasions, I've had severe thunderstorms pop up with little warning while on the trail. Dress seasonally appropriate, including proper footwear. Bring an emergency kit, sufficient water, and other key items. If backpacking, bring a weather-appropriate tent, sleeping bag, and related gear. And take some time to do some contingency planning. It's that last step that I'd like to spend some time on. Once, after a bear encounter on the Appalachian Trail, I had a restless night during which my mind raced about things that could have gone wrong during the bear encounter and other events of the day. However, I remembered that before our backpacking trip, my hiking companion Badger and I specifically discussed what we would do if we encountered bears during the hike. And when we did encounter the bears, we did what we had planned, and it de-escalated the situation quite well. I guess you call that contingency planning. From a contingency planning standpoint, here are some questions to think about when solo day hiking in the winter. What type of clothing should I wear if the weather is 10 degrees colder than forecast? If I fell and broke my leg or twisted my ankle, what would I do to get rescued or get back to the trailhead? If it unexpectedly starts snowing, how will I be able to see the trail, and how will I stay dry? If I need help and can't get a cell signal, what can I do to get help? What if unexpectedly I have to spend the night on the trail? How do I stay warm and survive a frigid night? If I were threatened by an animal, how could I make them go away? I realize you can't plan for every possible contingency, but I think you should prepare for both the most extreme possibilities as well as those that are more likely. For instance, twisting your ankle is much more likely than being attacked by a moose. I like solo hiking because I enjoy solitude in the wilderness. But I believe that from a safety standpoint, it is much safer to hike with a companion. If one of you suffers an injury, the other can go for help. The decision as to whether or not you should take a companion from a safety perspective depends on many factors. A few considerations I consider include the length of the hike, the difficulty of the hike, how much hiker traffic is typically on the trail, probable weather conditions, your physical condition, probability of wildlife confrontations, and will there be reliable cell service on the trail. But I find that sometimes there is no one available to hike with me, so if I am going to solo hike, I need to plan accordingly. I've been told by my friends that I over-prepare and carry too much stuff with me. But most of my excess gear is because of my contingency planning exercises. There are some items I always carry in my pack on every hike, even short day hikes. An emergency first aid kit, a tourniquet, 1 or sometimes 2 water bottles and water, an emergency blanket, the ones made of a thin piece of mylar, an emergency rain poncho, a cell phone with a power bank and cable, a GPS watch, a compass, a trail map, a whistle, a notepad and pen, a pocket knife, and a cigarette lighter. Several of those items can be purchased cheaply at Walmart or a dollar store. There's no need to pay the high prices of the outdoor stores for everything we need. I believe that this combination of items would help me in many different scenarios. I can treat minor wounds, start a fire, stay sort of warm, determine my location, call for help, scare animals away, stay sort of dry, stay hydrated, and leave notes for people searching for me. Other things I routinely add to my basic kit depending on the situation include bear spray, real rain gear as opposed to the emergency rain poncho I previously mentioned, gloves, a knit cap, a blaze orange cap during hunting season, extra socks, hand warmers, and a 2-way radio. While carrying those items does add weight to my day pack, I don't find it cumbersome because it's still far lighter than my fully loaded backpack. For backpacking trips, I also include all the routine overnight gear needed, including a seasonally appropriate tent and ground cloth, seasonally appropriate sleeping bag and pad, a water filtration unit, a backpacking stove, a cooking pot, a bowl, and a spork, food, a bear bag and rope, toilet paper, and a trowel. I've been thinking about buying a bear can to use instead of a bear bag. If you're not familiar with bear cans, do an internet search to check them out. They're pretty cool, but they do seem a bit pricey for what they are. While I day hike all year long, most of my backpacking journeys have been in the summer, spring, or fall. I tend to avoid cold weather camping as I've had very cold nights in the woods that were not pleasant. If you're going to camp in cold weather, make sure that your gear is winter appropriate. I once slept in a sleeping bag with a 30-degree rating, and the temperature unexpectedly dropped to 25 degrees during the night. It was a miserable night. Take the temperature rating of your sleeping bag seriously, and make sure the temperature rating of your sleeping bag is at least 10 degrees below what you expect the low temperature will be. It's also very important to have a very good sleeping pad that will provide excellent insulation from the cold winter ground. Most tents are 3-season tents. However, there are winter or 4-season tents that are designed for winter use. They are typically beefier than 3-season tents and better able to withstand wind and rain and snow. Some are also double-walled and should provide a bit more insulation than a 3-season tent. Be aware that winter, if you think of winter as the time of year when we get cold weather, can be a very long season in certain geographies and higher elevations. I've seen snow the week before Memorial Day in Yellowstone. And while it's not typical, I've also seen snow in April and October in the southern Appalachians. I also recommend a strategy of layering your clothes during cold weather so that you can easily remove a layer if you get too hot or add a layer if you get too cold. Aspects of hiking and backpacking that I enjoy include that wilderness activities provide me an opportunity to disconnect from the world, and that the basic items used are not very different from the ones old Davy Crockett used, except that black powder musket he used to kill the bar. However, modern electronic devices can have valuable safety benefits. Your most important electronic safety tool is your cell phone. With a cellular connection, you can call for help, send texts, send emails, and use many helpful apps. However, I have noticed that in many of the areas that I've hiked, the data connections can be very weak or even non-existent. Having only one bar makes it virtually impossible to use any of the features that require a data connection. As I mentioned before, I carry a charged power bank with me to keep my devices functional. However, the power bank will eventually become depleted after using several times. So I also have a folding solar cell phone charger, but have found that it requires unobstructed sunlight and takes forever, and I do mean forever, to charge my phone. Connected GPS watches can be an important safety tool as well. I use a Garmin GPS watch connected to my cell phone by Bluetooth on all of my hikes. I can track my location and hiking progress and broadcast it to a website on which the people who I've given the web link to can see my location and track my progress. This could be a valuable safety tool, particularly if you're solo hiking. If someone is tracking your progress and can see that you haven't moved in an hour or two, they can call you on your cell phone and make sure you're okay. If you're unresponsive and continue not moving, they can notify the authorities and provide them with your general location. The downside of using this feature is on hikes in mountains and remote locations, cell service can be spotty, if available at all. The online tracking only works if there's a cellular data connection. Garmin also has a series of handheld satellite communication devices that will do the same thing and also let you send text. They utilize a satellite connection rather than a cellular connection. There is, however, a $15 a month fee for that service. I don't own one of these as I'm a cheapo and don't want to pay that monthly fee, so I'm not sure how well they work. If you hike in remote wilderness areas frequently, this type of device along with the for-fee service may make a lot of sense as a safety tool. You can also carry a small, lightweight GMRS/FRS two-way radio with you, which can be used for emergency communications if there's no cellular service. I have a set of inexpensive Midland two-way radios that are advertised to have a 28-mile range. In reality, your signal could only be received by someone anywhere close to that distance if completely unobstructed by trees, mountains, and other objects. This radio also receives NOAA weather radio channels, which is the primary reason that I use it. It's easy to set it on NOAA band alarm mode so that it notifies you when there is a severe weather alert. I hope you found this special episode of the podcast to be of value. I do think it's important to do some pre-planning before you take any hike. If you keep your day pack and backpack already packed with most of the items that I've discussed, like I do, it really doesn't take all that long. For most trails these days, you can also quickly print off maps from the internet or download them via a phone or GPS app. Over the years, I've read several books on wilderness survival to better educate myself. I would recommend that if you've not already done so, read a book on the topic. I would also encourage you to be open to the idea of abandoning a hike for safety's sake if the weather conditions turn unexpectedly extreme, or if you've had an injury or feel ill. Don't feel like the trail beat you. The trail will still be there the next time you're in the area. For most of us, we hike and backpack because it's fun. Being prepared gives us the ability to continue to have that fun for many years to come.